Hello, everyone. I am Brady Bridges, and I'm the broker and owner of Reside Real Estate here in Fort Worth, Texas. I want to welcome you to another episode of Real Talk with Reside Real Estate. We are a top producing team here in Fort Worth, Texas, and we want this podcast to be a resource for anyone looking to learn more about real estate and the great city of Fort Worth, Texas. Today, I'm joined by Carley Moore of League Real Estate. Carley's been in the business now for 14 years. She's earned such accolades as one of Fort Worth's Business 40 Under 40 for 2016, top producer for a total of 9 years, and has been voted multiple years as one of D Magazine's and Fort Worth Magazine's best real estate agents and top producers. Carley and her husband Brandon met at Fort Worth's own Colonial Golf Tournament in 2007. They live with their two daughters, Adeline and Amelia, in Ridgely Hills here in Fort Worth. So Carley, I'm so excited to have you here today. I think this is going to be really interesting. I always enjoy when we get together and talk about real estate and either team building or how we're doing our business. So thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation. It's been fun to watch your personal business grow, and now you have your own brokerage. And I appreciate you and all the ways you're trying to continue to improve Fort Worth real estate.
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
Well, I moved to Fort Worth in 2008. My husband and I had been dating long distance and thought, well, Fort Worth seems like a pretty cool place. I was in Lubbock at the time. So I came to Fort Worth after we had dated for about a year and was trying to figure out what to do. I was in banking. It was a great opportunity. I actually enjoyed what I did. I focused on customer service. I ran 2 branches. I had several employees, but it wasn't quite, my all-time career. And so he was in banking at the time too. That's how we ended up crossing paths inadvertently at the Colonial Golf Tournament. We both used to work for Plains Capital Bank. So I stopped by, we met, then the rest is history. I moved and wasn't sure what I wanted to do. My degree's in biology, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm a nerd. But I didn't take it far enough to make it real useful, so I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I had some marketing experience through the bank and thought, maybe some marketing. I'll get into that. Well, you kind of have to have a little more than just some experience there. And so I was trying to figure it out and just having my resume passed around, which was, cool. I got some neat opportunities, and I also had some really bad interviews. But beyond that, I decided to get into real estate. I had a conversation. I was a for sale by owner when I sold my house in Lubbock in order to move here, and I really did hate it. It was stressful. I had a full-time job. I had no clue what I was doing.
That gives you all the reasons. Now you totally understand why you need an agent.
Oh my gosh. I appreciate myself so much for the things that I now know. You don't know what you don't know, right? And I thought, I don't know. Someone asked about real estate, but I said, I'll have a conversation. I always will. Why not? And it sounded fun and flexible. And this was 2008 and the market was blowing and going. Mm-hmm. So I started with a small local brokerage, worked on getting my license, and in January 2009, I got licensed when the phones quit ringing.
Yeah, right when everything fell flat.
It's like, this is a great time. Yeah.
I was on the other side of that with oil and gas when it was following right behind, so that fell flat, and I was in that industry.
Yeah. It was definitely an interesting time, for sure.
So one thing that's really cool about Carley, whenever I had really first started going, I actually met with her and had lunch and picked her brain because, anybody that's listening to this in Fort Worth knows who Carley is for the most part in real estate.
Oh, goodness.
It's true. So I thought this would be a really good time because obviously you and I have talked about team building and things like that. So going through what it takes. And what's cool is you and I have grown our business in different ways. I'm heavy online lead gen. You're very much past client referral. So I wanted to kind of focus on how we can help newer agents getting into this business or people that maybe are in it now, to be able to grow and one, have a quality of life at the same time, because I feel like that's something we struggle with still to this day. But
right.
That's one of the things we talk about when we do meet is just how to actually be with our family and take care of our business at the same time. Mm-hmm. So, let's just kind of go. Who do you typically working with? You're focused on a residential, but what type of clients are you typically working with here in Fort Worth?
Well, that's a good question, and it's a hard one to answer because I don't really have a particular client profile per se.
Are you working with more people that are actually here in town? Do you have a lot of out-of-state buyers? Like, what are you seeing more of?
Well, being that I do have a referral-based business, I kind of go where I'm needed. I've had the experience of, Tarrant County, Johnson County, Parker County. I don't get too far. I have someone in Dallas I refer to if anyone needs to go that direction. And I've done investment properties, but it's mostly owner-occupant. Friends of friends or friends' colleagues. Just different people that know me or that have worked with me in the past. I've received referrals from people that weren't clients, but just kind of knew me personally and knew I would take care of them. So I don't really have a particular
You go where you're needed.
I go where I'm needed. And 1 to 4 family is still my wheelhouse. I don't do apartments. I don't do farm and ranch. I don't do commercial.
Well,
I really try to focus on just that residential piece.
And I think that's good advice for new agents. You mentioned that when it gets over to Dallas, you refer it out. I think one of the things you have to learn early on is what you know and you don't know what you don't. So you're doing your clients an injustice when you try to take something on that you really don't know about, or you might be leading them the wrong way. If you go to, I don't know anything about Dallas really either, in terms of, I know specific neighborhoods that are really good in areas, but you want to give people that know what they're doing the opportunity.
Yeah. And I think when I was new, I did not necessarily, subscribe to that advice, just because when you're hungry and you'll do whatever you need to do. So, I remember showing in Little Elm before Little Elm even got big and driving home at 10 o'clock at night because I had worked with some clients and we were looking at new builds. And,
that probably were also, about $100,000.
Yeah, especially, in 2009. So, you go where you need to go because you also gain experience through the process.
Sure.
And, I always kind of thought too, well, I can certainly write a contract. The contract's the same, whether you're buying in Fort Worth or you're buying in Little Elm, for example. But I did realize that the more experience I got, the harder it was for me to feel comfortable because, well, what's around the corner? How do you get to that grocery store? Hold on real quick and I'll look it up for you on Google. I just did not know. And so I do think there's a lot of power in really being more entrenched in the areas that you work in and being able to provide, oh, well, that's down the street or that's around the corner. I've heard that's a good school. Just being a little more of that local expert will do your clients a better service. And so I do really kind of ask myself those questions. Do I know enough to help them outside of just the house itself? Yeah,
and that's one of the things in like my new agent onboarding for new agents is to do preview areas, because if you don't know, like if you're around Tanglewood or Westcliff, you got to know boundary because people are looking for school. So it's really important to go out and know what you're talking about. And so,
absolutely.
So obviously from when you started to now, what does an average day look like for a top producing real estate agent like yourself?
Oh, well, I think, new or experience, regardless of your volume, it just depends on the day and on the market. Right now it's slowed down a little bit. That's why I have time to sit here with you. But seriously, I do my best to write out my to-do list the night before. I kind of get to brain dump, so that's good for me. I'm also a big list maker. If you're into the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 3. So sometimes I'll write things down I already did just so I can check them off. I love being efficient. I love being productive. And so some of that just is your natural drive. What do I have to do today? I actually have a hard time resting, relaxing, because I know there's always something to do. And it's true. If you're trying to build your business, what can you do today? Like, be mindful. Like, who can you connect with? Who could you call? Who could you set up a coffee with? Who could you write a thank you note to? There's always something to do, and it's just being disciplined enough to do that without overwhelming yourself.
Yeah, one of the things I've kind of lived by is that activity always leads to results. Like you do a lot of things in the beginning that may seem like you're getting nowhere, but if you continue to do them, whether it's making your phone calls or all the stuff you talked about, eventually someone will notice and a piece of business will fall in your lap. And then from there, all the work you've done will just start to snowball. At least that's been my experience.
Oh, absolutely. I also remember probably even in my third year in business, I knew I was being consistent. I was doing all of the right things and I was working my you-know-what off. And I did have that moment like, okay, when is the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah.
And I think that there's probably some statistic out there somewhere that says, all those calls you made don't really call you back until about year 3 to 5, I want to say. And that's tough for a lot of people to hang in there that long and to keep going when it feels like it might not pay off. But then all of a sudden, the phone rings versus you making the call.
Yeah. I tell agents, new agents, and then people, some of the groups that I'm in, these mastermind groups, a lot of times when you first get in the business, I say, don't count on your friends and family to use you right away. Because I think a lot of people want to see you have staying power and are committed to the actual job.
Right.
So that's why I think, like kind of what you said, being proactive with your business and like you make your list, you know what you're going to do the next day. A lot of agents fall into the reactive side of things and they just wait for things to happen. So they fall behind because they're just waiting on hoping something comes. So
right.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
So for new agents getting in the business now, or let's just say you've been in the business for a year, we've seen a major shift in the market from the past 2 years. What advice would you give to those people who have been in either just started or they were in the crazy hot market? What would you tell them to do right now? What are you doing?
Well, after you've been in the business for a while too, so I'm not typically, believe it or not, one of those word of the year people, but I do have a word of the year this year, and it's reconnect. I think when a market slows down, that's the best time to focus on reconnecting. Circle back with those people that you haven't talked to in a while, you haven't heard from in a while. See what's new with them. I think if you're a new agent, it really is just finding who can you connect with and focusing on education. For newer agents who jumped into a crazy hot market, there's a lot they didn't learn because they didn't have time to.
They didn't have to. And
they didn't potentially have to because it was, somewhat easier depending on what side of the listing you were on. But I really just think that just improving, working on your negotiation skills. I don't know how much it's helped just yet, but I'm listening to Never Split the Difference.
Okay.
Have you ever?
I haven't, no.
I'm on Audible, so I listen in the car, but just trying to pick up different, thinking about what better ways can I negotiate? What ways can I improve? Because regardless of your tenure in the business, there's always something new to learn, and you're going to be working with an agent who could be 20 years in that'll teach you something, and could be 2 months in that can teach you something.
Absolutely.
So there's always, little nuggets to pick up.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned word of the year because it kind of hit me last week. I was reading a review that one of my agents got, and she wrote impact in the review. And that's kind of the word I've adopted is what I want us to do here through real estate is impact people through real estate. And I want to impact agents through the team and the brokerage on helping them grow. So I buy into it. I mean, it helps me. And I actually changed our group thread that says Reside Team Impact because I think it's important to have those things that you're trying to drive through, like your core values of what you're trying to do in your business. So,
right.
Well, that's really good advice. So one of the things that I know you and I have in common, we talk about is we both have families, young kids. So what would you say, how do you manage trying to grow your business and handle it at a high level and also be a good spouse and good mom and be present? Because I know sometimes it's hard when you have business. You've been driving, then you have a family. So how do you manage that work-life balance to make sure you're not pulled in so many different directions?
That is like the $1 million question, right? That everyone wants to know. And I'll hit on something that someone taught me a while back that I try to focus on, that I've even passed along and other times I've been asked to speak. You hit on work-life balance. And I think balance is a little bit deceiving. The word that was introduced that I like to focus on is harmony. How can you harmonize
I like that.
your work and your life? Because balance is never attainable. You're going to be killing it at work. Your home life might suffer. You might not get to tuck in at night, or you might be taking a call during dinner, or you might have to be doing something else. Then you might be killing it at home, and you're making all the school things and, volunteering and dropping off goodies and, taking extra play dates. And, oh, well, I missed that potential phone call and I didn't get the listing. There's always a little bit of imbalance. So I think harmony is like, how can I just make all of this work together where I feel fulfilled with what I'm doing work-wise, but I also know that, I'm being the best that I can be as a mom, and understanding that when I do my best, that is good enough.
Yeah. I don't know if you get this. Can you please just get off your phone all the time?
I really have focused a lot on trying to have some more boundaries. That's been hard for me as a people pleaser, but I'm a recovering people pleaser. Customer service is so important to me and like deep in my soul that I also have to realize that,
that's your brand.
My family's also, an appointment that I wouldn't, reschedule.
Absolutely.
And so it's just trying to do the best I can with that. But yeah, every now and then you've got to take the call, and sometimes you do have to get off the phone.
Whenever I'm talking to new agents, that I kind of throw out all the negative parts of this job so that they know, there's going to be times when you're, especially in the beginning. The beginning is a grind. At least you kind of just have to do it to get to a point where you have the freedoms to be flexible and to set boundaries. But I tell them all the time, there's going to be a date night that you have on Friday, and you're going to have to cancel it to go show houses. Like, are you really wanting to do that? Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people look and see where some of the top agents are at, and they want to be there, but you have to kind of crawl before you walk in real estate, build your business up a little bit, and then you can afford yourself a little more freedom. All the great benefits of real estate, I think, they don't come in your first year. The flexibility, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I also am like, I love this work, so it's really hard for me to turn it off because I just love it.
Oh, does it get turned off? I'm always thinking about things or trying to make connections in between houses and clients. And, it doesn't get turned off. And I think that's a little bit of a personality thing. I think that's a really powerful strength. I also think that's where you have to train yourself to take a step back every now and then, because it's hard to turn it off. I just go. And because I also love it, and it's fun, and, it keeps me active and all of that. I will say flexibility is the one thing that when I have the invitation to speak to new agents, I don't give them all the Debbie Downer stuff, but I am realistic with them. Like, because it's not just you and your schedule. If you do have a husband, or a wife, or even if you don't have kids, they have to be pretty open to your schedule as well. Because, I'm going to give, my husband Brandon some credit. He has been such a great partner in understanding that, like, I do need to go show a house, and he will have to probably do something that, we're a team, and we operate that way, and we divide and conquer, and we do whatever we can, because your other half, whoever that may be, eventually, even if it's not right now and you're a new agent and you're single and you can have all this extra time to do some of the things to build your business, flexibility is a little bit of a myth, because you are flexible more for people than the business is flexible for you.
Sure.
So just recognizing that, and then kind of finding the best way to
I definitely think
that.
Having a supportive spouse in what you do is very, very important. So one other thing I want to touch on. So obviously I know you've had assistants and team members. When would you tell someone at a certain point in their business that they need to scale to a point where they either have transaction coordinators or some type of assistant to help them carry on their business. Because I see a lot of people that I talk to just in that coaching group I'm in, they tend to bring people in before I think they need to. So when did you decide that it was a good time to bring in, support and help from other people to help you continue on in your business and expand it and grow it?
Well, when you're averaging an 80-hour work week, you probably need help.
Was that hard for you to give up some of that?
Well, I definitely have very high standards, and I do like to have my hands in control of the process because everything I do reflects me, and and I care about my clients and want to make sure that it's all handled well, and no one will handle it exactly like I do. That's always the hard part too. But I think it depends on how much are you working and how efficient are you? Because different people have different levels of efficiency. I probably can do more things than someone else, and I also might not be able to do everything someone else does. But I would probably say if it has to be at a certain production level, most of the time when you get to, for sure, depending on your own personal level, for sure, when you hit that 10 million mark, I think you really need to consider having some level of help, because that's kind of a natural breaking point, in my opinion, where once you get a little bit of help, you can do the things that you should be more focused on. The background stuff, kind of the low hanging, fruit, that's easy for most people to do. But the growth and what you need to do to kind of like scale, only you can really do. So you do need help to take care of all of that, because there's going to be things that go on the back burner, because no matter how efficient you are, I've tried.
You're only one person.
You can't do it all. Yeah.
I got a good piece of advice for one of my clients. I was watching him. He's a high level with Morgan Stanley. And he told me, I was just wondering how I could do more. And looking at him, he was continuing to do professional development. He did coaching. But he said the only way you can get from one level to the next level is either through people and scaling. Because like you said, if you're working 80 hours, you can't work any more than you can work. Mm-hmm. So I think that's good advice in our market. 10 million, that's probably doing 40 transactions within a year, I would guess, here right now. Price point keeps going up though.
Yeah. So
we're going to kind of finish it up. What is the craziest thing you've seen in your real estate career?
How much time you got? No. Everyone, I always remember being new in the business and that joke that, every real estate agent could write a book, about some of the things they've seen or experienced. And, there's always some funny stories out there and some sad and scary ones too. So that's tough. I do tend overall though to be pretty drama free, thankfully. I'll credit myself for that. I don't get into that if at all possible. But I do, however, have a past client. I helped him buy his first house, and he is now a realtor in the Weatherford area. Okay. And has since then, sent me business here in Fort Worth, since that's kind of out of his wheelhouse now. But when we were looking, first-time home buyer and going to different houses, and we could tell, we walked into this house and it was not a great fit. But, you've shown houses. Let's point out this wonderful feature that's probably okay, but, you're just trying to make the best of it and keep going. Maybe it'll get better. So we keep going back towards the house, and we come around and we enter the primary ensuite and go into the bathroom. And there's this pole. And I said, well, they're probably doing some work here and needed some added support, and he looks at me and goes,
it's a stripper pole, isn't it?
We both know what that is. And we just died laughing. It was one of those things that I'm like, I don't know why someone would want a stripper pole in the bathroom.
Like to see the picture description.
To each their own. Yeah.
Okay. Last question I've got for you. Everyone I've asked this, what do you love about Fort Worth? What would you tell people who are looking to move here that is great about being in this community?
Well, I'm a big Fort Worth fan, so I'll say everything. Love it all. Seriously, though, I do like hearing, it's it's a big, small town. You know, there's a lot of connections. There's a lot of just really nice people and genuine people. I think that's something that as we continue to grow, we will have to really hold sacred. But, you know, it's like, I think it's hard to find anywhere else that has great growth, good places to work, is a great place to raise a family, you know, that has kind of this Cowboys, you know, where it's fun and you can cut up, but it also has culture where you can go to the museums and be a little more refined, right? And then, you know, it's Funky Town in the Fort, and it's kind of like being at the cool table. Fort Worth is just a great place to be. It's easy to travel out of if you want to go travel. You know, overall the weather's pretty good. Mm-hmm. And it's just, there's so much to do and it just keeps getting better.
Yeah. One of the things that Zach and I talked about, just how much also there's so much local support within the community and collaboration, right? Like we're at different places, but I just find it really cool that I can reach out to people at different brokerages or different companies, and everybody's so supportive of one, like helping people here, but also just talking about the city, things like that.
Yeah.
Well, Carley, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
So,
thanks for having me.
How could someone get a hold of you if they wanted to find out more about you or any information?
Well, on Instagram or Facebook, it's Carley J Realtor. And if you want to go to League's website, it's leaguere.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Carley. This is another episode of Real Talk with Reside Real Estate. Thank you all for listening and hope you have a good one.